Most portrait painting courses and workshops today present a mishmash of historical approaches that are not only technically unsound, but also limiting to one's development of a unique personal and expressive voice. The intent of painting Clara Serena is to both provide and train you in the practice of portrait painting in oil as developed by the high Baroque artist Peter Paul Rubens. Studying Rubens provides a springboard for both a sound, technical approach and a foundation in oil painting practice upon which your own expression can be developed. The study of Rubens has well served artists as diverse as Velázquez, Degas, Van Gogh, Picasso, just to name a very few. The informal painting of his young daughter Clara Serena shows Rubens at his very best. This was an uncommissioned portrait painted solely for the love of painting, and herein is found the full array of oil painting technique from the underpainted optical grisaille, glazing, and rubbing, the initial laying in of the abbozzo, this is the dead coloring, and the knitting and abstract structural patina of colored forms in the overpainting. Clara Serena is an excellent work to study, due in large part to both its expression and timbre that is still sympathetic to our modern tastes. In painting Clara Serena, I have endeavored to remain faithful to Rubens' painting method. But there are limitations. First, the materials used in the 17th century are either no longer in existence or of an entirely different character altogether. And second, this is foremost a training program dedicated to the practice of oil painting rather than an academic presentation, although I have sought to strike a balance. And speaking of academics, there is much erroneous information published and republished ad nauseum regarding this informal portrait. The Liechtenstein Palace Museum has much to bear here. First, the painting is on panel, not canvas, and the dimensions are not 27 by 37 centimeters. I will address the dimensions forthwith. But the real academic insult is the pervasive cropping of the painting. Most publications present Clara Serena cropped at the top of the head. This is akin to lobbing off the first stanza of William Butler Yeats' Easter 1916. Imagine tossing out, all changed, changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. My apologies for this apoplectic outburst. Perhaps my meds need recalibrating. Rubens, like his painting mentor Titian, was a master of compositional geometry. Here, I have composited an image of Clara Serena, which shows the top of the panel, onto another image with a seal in the lower left corner that was entailed in 1733, almost a century after Rubens departed this vale of tears, is fully visible and not cropped. Although a rather poor work, this 1901 copy by Sargent's successor of aristocratic portraiture, the Hungarian Philip de Laszlo, does provide good fodder for determining both the composition and true size of the original painting. I began with a hypothesis that Clara Serena would have a simple and eloquent underlying geometry. Greek theories of harmonic proportions were very much in vogue during the High Renaissance and Baroque. My hypothesis' veracity wholly depends upon a clean and straightforward matrix. Any fancy footwork with my geometry set, and the hypothesis is trashed. Using the composite image, I first applied a rebattement. This is a square onto the base of the picture. Our eye enters Clara Serena from the bottom and travels upwards. Seeing that the rebattement touches the hairline gives me hope that I might be on the right track, as such a placement is typical of Rubens. Constructing a root 2 rectangle yields little other than an interesting placement for the node of the mouth on the rebatment's diagonal. A root 3 rectangle, which is constructed from the root 2, looked to be at first unpromising. But a diagonal drawn from the upper left corner of the rebattement to the upper right root 3 corner succinctly yielded the answer I sought. The vertical center of the painting neatly intersects the rebatment root 3 diagonal, thus establishing the top of the panel. I think it is fair to say that the hypothesis composition is plausible, unless proved otherwise. Working out the math yields a panel measuring 28.44 by 38.9 centimeters. I sincerely doubt that Rubens would have dragged out his compass and triangles to work out the geometry. Rubens, possessing a keen sense of proportion, would have simply marked where he wanted the panel to be cut by one of his assistants. Recognizing dynamic rectangles is an acquired skill, which, when put into constant practice, becomes ingrained. In fact, well-trained artists can literally smell a composition's geometric matrix. As to whether Rubens began Clara Serena with an underpainting is unanswerable. There are clues here and there, but no definitive proof. It is generally beneficial, then, to look to other similar works. In Rubens' splendid portrait of Susanna Lunden, circa 1622, painted 4 years after Clara Serena, and also on panel, the full range of Rubens' method is readily apparent, including the underpainting. Although carried further than Clara Serena, this marriage portrait maintains many other characteristics of the informal painting of his young daughter. Then again, it's quite conceivable that Rubens began Clara Serena by first sketching in the abbozzo with asphaltum. Today we use raw umber, and proceeded immediately with the coloring in. However, the translucent, dichroic qualities of the aged paint, Clara Serena is almost 400 years old, speak to an optical grisaille that paintings begun at the abbozzo stage lack. For the first few passes of Clara Serena, I recommend using cheap canvas cardboard panels. If you are an advanced artist with a good command of drawing, skip the cartoon and proceed immediately with sketching in with a round brush on top of the imprimatura. The beginning to intermediate artists should begin with a cartoon, and in later passes also begin with the brush. Expect that it will take 6, maybe more, practice panels before you feel ready to work on a glue chalk panel. And believe you me, once you get the feel for painting on a well-prepared glue chalk panel, any other surface will be decidedly inferior. The background music used in painting Clara Serena is Jonkje van Oyck's Don Daphne Doorskoen Meid. Now, my Dutch is extremely shaky. This was composed for the recorder and played specifically for this workshop by Miriam Lulu Brodeken. Van Eyck was a Dutch nobleman, born blind in the small town of Heusden. He was one of the best known musicians in the Netherlands in the early 17th century, and very likely known to Rubens, who often hired musicians and poets to play while he painted.